It felt less like a wedding and more like a funeral. There was no music, no happiness, just the soft sound of worn-out shoes on decaying floorboards and the oppressive hush of a room full of people who knew something was wrong but were too afraid to say anything. June 3, 1901. Deep in the hills of western Tennessee, a woman in a pale dress went down an aisle created by her ancestors' sins to wed the boy who had shared her mother's womb, her brother. The name Whitlock is unknown to most people, and those who do know it prefer to remain silent. But if you know the right person in the right part of Hickman County to ask, they will tell you there was something wrong with that particular bloodline. A family tree that, like a snake eating its own tail, coiled in on itself. Branches that loop back to their starting point rather than branching out. They claim it was a result of pride. Landowners who were isolated and convinced that no outsider was good enough for them, so they lived in seclusion and eventually kept only to themselves. Almeda Whitlock was the name of the bride. When she wed Isaiah, her twin, they were both 22 years old. They were twins by blood, but not by soul. They were raised as siblings but treated as halves of the same fractured whole. Their father, Eli, taught that blood was holy and that it was a sin against the family to mix it with strangers. His sermons were never preached in churches. They were spoken at dinner, whispered at bedtime, and carved into the walls of their home like commandments. Almeda was old enough to know better, but she didn't. Her world revolved around her family, and Isaiah was the only boy she was ever allowed to speak to or touch. Eli blessed their union on the day of the wedding with words taken directly from Genesis, twisting the Bible to fit his own narrative. The neighbors, most of whom were distant relatives, stood in silence and watched. Some of them nodded in agreement, while others stared at the ground. No one put a stop to it. Nobody was brave enough. In families like the Whitlocks, silence is not merely a custom, it is a rule. One that holds more tightly than any passage from the Bible ever could. However, this was more than just a story of seclusion. This was generational engineering, a blueprint drawn in flesh and passed down through generations via forced loyalty, psychological abuse, and the belief that purity was more significant than sanity. That day, Almeda didn't smile. She didn't smile when the veil was lifted or when the rings were exchanged. Her eyes remained empty, like someone watching a fire from inside their own home. She had been indoctrinated and groomed since she was a child to believe that there was no world outside the property line and no future other than being at her brother's side. Their house, a cabin covered in vines, was located behind a ridge where mail rarely arrived and visitors never stayed. The Whitlocks did not take kindly to outsiders. One of the boys would greet you with a shotgun before you even reached the porch if you came up the path. People eventually learned to leave them alone. And that's exactly how Eli preferred it. Isolation was a tool. The more the outside world was painted as evil, the more the kids clung to the little they had. The blood, the rules, the family. In that house, there were no locks, yet no one ever left. It was a prison without bars. And the day she was born, Almeida's sentence began. Almeida's mother, who some claimed was also Eli's cousin, rarely spoke above a whisper. Her hands were constantly shaking. She had 11 pregnancies. 6 survived. Each one of them stayed. Every child was taught the same stories of betrayal from the outside world and the same scriptures. The curtain remained closed if a neighbor moved too close. If a letter arrived, it was burned unread. Almeda was no longer permitted to enter the town by the time she was 16. Eli became anxious as her body changed. It was at this point that the supervision became constant. That was when Isaiah started sleeping in her room. The reasoning was simple. You defend what is yours. Eli never said what he meant. He didn't have to. In the Whitlock home, nothing needed to be said twice. The wedding was not a surprise. It was something that was anticipated. There had been years of subtle encouragement and quiet rewards. Isaiah was praised for his closeness to Almeda and his unwavering commitment to the bloodline's will. And Almeda, she was praised for not paying attention to any other boy. They referred to it as *** loyalty ***. But it was *** fear ***. asterisk asterisk grooming asterisk asterisk, an asterisk asterisk emotional starvation asterisk asterisk masquerading as asterisk asterisk devotion asterisk asterisk. The Whitlocks referred to what outsiders might call incest as asterisk asterisk tradition asterisk asterisk. What others saw as asterisk asterisk psychological abuse asterisk asterisk, they referred to as asterisk asterisk preservation asterisk asterisk. But the most unsettling aspect is that Almeida was not the first Whitlock bride to wed a relative. She was the only one the town remembered, though. With the children, the first indications of something seriously wrong appeared. Within a year of that unholy union, Almeida gave birth to a son. He was born in the same room where she and Isaiah had grown up, on the same bed, and underneath the same crosses that Eli had carved into the rafters. However, the baby did not cry right away. His eyes were overly wide, and his limbs were oddly stiff. A midwife was called from 3 hollows away, but by the time she got there, the baby had already passed away. They buried him behind the barn, where the soil was soft and the trees leaned in like eavesdroppers. There were no prayers, no marker, just a liar mumbling scripture with dirt on his hands. "The Lord gives, the Lord takes," he said as if it were just another Sunday. But that day, something inside Almeida changed. She didn't scream. She didn't fall. She just stood there, quiet, still, and broken in a way that could not be fixed. But the next year, it happened once more. Another child. This one survived longer, but not without consequences. He was sickly, quiet, with skin that was waxy and thin like paper. The town doctor, when he was finally permitted to see him, asked Eli questions he did not like. Questions regarding blood relations and genetics. The doctor never came back. Some claim he left town without a word of warning. Others are not so sure. What is certain is that the Whitlocks stopped accepting outside assistance after that. Every illness was handled by the family. Every deformity, every miscarriage, and every funeral were all kept within the family. Almeida had given birth to 4 kids by 1908. Only one made it to age 5. His name was Levi. He didn't speak until he was almost 4. He never smiled. His head was too big for his body, and he didn't blink at the right times. The townspeople started to whisper. They did not say the word inbred out loud, but they thought it. You could see it in the way they stepped off the path when the Whitlocks went to the market. You could feel it in the way that conversation stopped when Almeida, clutching her son like a secret she couldn't bury, passed by. And Eli still referred to it as divine judgment. He'd say, "The Lord is refining us, burning away the weak blood, making something new." But nothing new was being created. Just more twisted lives and more suffering. And Almeida, who had once been a daughter, then a bride, and now a mother, began to resemble a ghost with each passing year. This was no longer a family. It was a cycle. A machine built to repeat a single horrific pattern from one generation to the next until someone broke it. By the time Almeida turned 30, only a routine was left of her. She would wake up before sunrise, feed the chickens, take care of Levi, and pretend she still had a soul. Isaiah barely spoke anymore. He spent his days chopping wood no one needed and staring at the trees as if they were whispering things only he could hear. Their conversations had become punctuated by Levi's peculiar humming, always the same note, always too loud in the stillness, and had devolved into silence. Eli aged, but he did not become gentler. His sermons grew darker and more apocalyptic. He spoke about purity and bloodlines with the fever of a man who believed the world would end if a single Whitlock ever strayed too far from home. And when Almeida's youngest daughter, Ruth, started to show signs of disobedience, asking questions, peering beyond the fence, and drawing pictures of things she had never seen, Eli responded with terror veiled as control. He locked her in the root cellar for 3 days, just 3, long enough for the girl to forget how to look someone in the eye. She stopped drawing after that. She stopped asking questions. Eli called it *** repentance ***. Almeida called it *** mercy ***. But on the inside, she started to fall apart. She once attempted to flee, taking a small cloth sack with cornbread and a Bible and carrying Levi in her arms into the darkness. She traveled less than 2 miles before Isaiah, his eyes wild and his fists shaking, found her. He didn't yell or hit her. He just stood there on the path and asked, "Where would you go?" And Almeida understood that she had no response. No money, no knowledge of the world outside of those woods, not even a last name that anyone would remember. Therefore, she turned around. However, after that night, she stopped talking in her sleep. She began to pray more loudly. She began to hum the same single note that Levi always did, until their voices blended together like a chant passed between mother and son. A sound without melody. A kind of language for those who are trapped. By that time, there were whispers in the town. A teacher had seen Ruth's drawings, faces with too many eyes and limbs that were too long. On the outskirts of the Whitlock property, a farmer discovered a small grave with a stone carved with only the letter A. No one inquired. No one was brave enough. But the fear was getting worse, not only of what had already happened but also of what might still be happening in that house beneath the hill. And no one, not even Almeida, could admit what she already knew. She had married her brother. She had buried her children. And now she was raising something much worse. They say that a bloodline can transmit not only features but also memories, patterns, and curses. Levi was 10 when he began to dig holes. Not for fun, not in play. Deep, narrow holes behind the barn, always 3 feet wide and 6 feet deep. When asked why, he just stared and said nothing. Eli smiled when he saw the first one. "The boy has instinct," he said. However, Almeida didn't smile. She also didn't get any sleep that night. By that time, Ruth had completely stopped speaking. Her hair had started to fall out in clumps. She would not eat unless Almeida fed her directly. And occasionally at night, she would scratch her own skin as if something were attempting to get out. No priest, no doctor, just Almeida, watching her children come apart one thread at a time, wondering if it was her punishment or her legacy. And the sermons went on. Eli would gather the children around the fireplace, the glow illuminating his face like a burning scarecrow, and talk about blood. "The outside world will never understand you," he would say. "But you were chosen, made clean by fire and closeness. We are the ark. Everyone else is the flood." That winter, Levi went missing for 2 days. When he got back, his hands were covered in something black that didn't smell like mud, and his boots were soaked. No one asked any questions. Eli just patted his head and referred to him as a true Whitlock. And this is the part that disturbs people the most. Not the graves, not the incest, not the birth defects, but the way the family made it appear to be faith, as if they were safeguarding something sacred when, in reality, they were building a temple to their own decay. That year, 3 cattle mutilations were reported in the area. A local boy, 14 years old, vanished close to the ridge. They only ever discovered his shoes, which were facing each other in the path as if someone had made him kneel, but they never located his body. The townspeople started locking their doors before dusk. Some boarded up their windows. Others simply moved away, whispering things they had heard, screams muffled by fog, chanting from the woods, a flickering lantern seen pacing the fields without anyone holding it. And still, no one ever knocked on the Whitlock door. No one stepped in. Because in places like that, cut off from the world and hidden behind trees older than any memory, fear is not just silence. It is *** agreement ***. It is *** complicity ***. And if you're still watching, you're already braver than most. The breaking point occurred in the spring of 1912. Eli collapsed in the fields one morning, mid-sermon, mid-sentence, just dropped to his knees as if the earth had finally claimed him back. Some claim it was his heart. Others whisper he had seen something in the woods that made his blood run cold. Almeida did not cry. Neither did Isaiah. They buried him without a coffin in the same orchard where he used to tie Levi's swings from tree limbs that were too brittle to support them. But after Eli passed away, something shifted. Or perhaps something was finally let loose. Isaiah became erratic, talking to shadows and locking Ruth in the smokehouse for no apparent reason. He started sleeping in the crawl space beneath the house, where rats had once nested and where Eli had kept records of bad blood in the family, instead of inside the house. The neighbors claimed that on some nights they could hear him laughing. On other nights, crying. And once, just silence, followed by the high-pitched sound of a saw. 2 weeks later, Almeida discovered what he had been carving beneath the house. 3 life-sized wooden figures, 2 adults, 1 child, no mouths, no eyes, just blank expressions painted with ash and etched with a hunting knife on their chests, ***, only family ***. That was the night she made the decision to flee once more. She brought Ruth with her. She didn't tell Isaiah. She waited until his mumbling under the floorboards became steady, then left just before dawn, barefoot, carrying her daughter in one arm and a Bible in the other. She didn't make it very far this time, either. A storm, thick with fog, had rolled in. The path she had known her entire life twisted like a serpent. She fell, cracked her ribs, and dropped the Bible. Ruth was gone when she opened her eyes. Just fog, trees, and the sound of something breathing that wasn't hers. No footprints, no voice. She stumbled back to the house. Isaiah was waiting at the door. He just pointed inside without saying anything. Ruth was sitting in the kitchen, silent, with wet hair and a torn dress, but she was smiling, her first smile in years. Almeida moved away. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't want to know, but she never tried to run again. And from that point on, Ruth was not quite the same. She started humming Levi's note, the same one, low and constant, as if it had been passed to her like a virus, as if the family had chosen its next vessel or prophet. By 1916, the Whitlock house had fallen into legend. The townspeople referred to it as the quiet place. Children were warned to stay away from it. When passing the ridge, grown men made the sign of the cross, but inside, the bloodline, if only in name, was still intact. Isaiah no longer spoke to anyone. He spent his days in the orchard, carving symbols into trees with a knife so worn it had no edge left. Almeida, frail and almost mute, moved through the house like a ghost wearing skin. She had turned grey before she was 40. Her back was bent, and her eyes were always looking for something no one else could see. Most nights, she would sit alone on the porch, rocking gently, whispering scripture that did not exist. And Ruth. Ruth had taken her place at the head of the table. She was no longer a child. Her skin was too pale, and her eyes were always overly wide. She rarely spoke, but when she did, the others, even Isaiah, especially Isaiah, listened. The words were not always clear, but they were obeyed. She would stare into the fireplace and speak in tones that did not sound like a girl or anyone else. By the time she turned 15, she was the one establishing the rules. No more books unless they came from the family shelf, which Eli had guarded like a reliquary, no more letters, no more trips to town. Ruth began keeping a journal. No one was allowed to read it. Each night, she would bury it in a box under the floorboards and lock it with a key she wore around her neck. Levi once tried to take it. He disappeared for 3 days and came back with a broken leg and a smile that had been stitched with thorns. Some people say Ruth was more than just the leader of the family. She was changing it. Speaking in tongues, using lamb's blood and charcoal to write symbols on the walls, and marking the thresholds, the door frames, and even their own bodies. When a fire finally swept through the Whitlock property in 1921, no one came to assist. The cabin, the orchard, and the entire backfield, where the graves had started to outnumber the living, were consumed by flames. The sheriff's report blamed lightning. The locals had a different story. There were no bodies found. No remains, just the charred edge of a Bible, open to Genesis 19. And in the soil, which was still warm with ash, was a small wooden figure, no eyes, no mouth, with the words ***, only family *** etched on its chest. Some people claim the Whitlocks were cursed. Others claim they were never truly human to begin with. But whatever the truth, the land remembers, and it always does. And if you ever find yourself on that ridge in Hickman County, Tennessee, stay away from the trees that lean inward. Do not follow the humming. And if you see a girl with pale skin and a crooked smile, do not let her speak your name.